Welcome to The Growth Equation. This isn't your typical business podcast. We're keeping it real about the challenges of scaling up, period. I'm Tristan Wright and I've been there. I've built and scaled my own business. I've sold it. I've learned a ton along the way. Now I'm bringing you the no BS stories of founders who are in the trenches right now, navigating that messy middle. We're talking advertising, marketing, design, creative, branding, the whole 9 yards. Doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur or running a team of 100. Everyone's got a secret sauce, that thing that makes them different, better. We're going to uncover it. So grab a coffee and let's get real. Today we're talking to Sean from Alchemy Leads. Welcome, Sean.
Hey, welcome. Thank you, Tristan. It's great to be here.
So Sean is one of our first international guests. We've been speaking primarily to Australian and our friends over the ditch, New Zealand agencies. But Sean's coming to us all the way from Denver. So it's 8 a.m. for me. I'm imagining it's about 4 p.m. for you, Sean?
You almost got us about 2:15.
Yeah, okay, awesome. So Sean, can you tell us a bit about who you are and your background, mate?
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, grateful to be here. We are an agency. I've been in marketing since 2009, 2010. So it's been a long ride, about 15 years. Worked with other agencies for a handful of years, saw the good, the bad, the ugly. And then somewhere around, I would say 2017, decided to take the risk to do it on my own, to take the leap, so to speak. And in that time, from 2017 to now, we're a very different company. We are an SEO company, but we're not pigeonholed into SEO. So for most of our customers, we're an SEO company, a PPC company, a social media marketing company. Now with AI, getting a little bit more into AI development, chatbots, AI agents. So we're essentially a company that generates revenue for other companies, to keep it simple. And yeah, things are going really well, but this is a very exciting time, I think, 2025 and beyond, with AI and with all the disruptions that are happening in the space.
Yeah, AI is totally changing the way we do business, and if we're not adapting and putting AI into our workflows, we're going to be out of business.
Adapt or die. Yeah.
So tell me, mate, where is your business now? Like, are you, just so we've got a bit of background, is it you and 2 or 3 others? Have you got 30 people? Just so everyone knows your journey.
Yeah, so it's been 8 years of this agency, of our own company. When we started, it was literally me doing a lot of the work, whether it was sales, HR, admin, the whole nine. Now, 8 years later, we have about 35 people. Actually closer to 40 people. We're a global or remote company. So we have, 30 devs in multiple offices in India. We have a couple of social media people in the Philippines, some email people in Germany, and then some writers in Canada and the US. So we're a much larger team than we were in the past. It's actually taken a lot off my plate. My main day-to-day is, I guess you would say, sales. Of course, the operations, making sure everything's running off without a hitch. That's a big part of it. But I don't actually have to do a lot of the fulfillment work. I don't create the social media ads. We have designers. I don't do the design. I don't, do the backlinks myself. So I'm grateful now that we have a good team. And I really rely on team, and team, becomes like your right hand. You help the team helps you. It's a really symbiotic relationship. So I'm always working on trying to get better as a team leader, which can be challenging. But really, I think the biggest challenge is just time. Your investment in your team is your time. So years ago, I might have been, when you're working with different time zones, you might have an action item that comes on your desk at 11 p.m. and you're about to go to sleep. Sometimes it's hard to find the time, but I've noticed that just by investing as much time as you can have and being super available to your team, it's really a win-win. It really helps you. They become stronger over time, and then you can delegate even more and sort of be out of the day-to-day on some things and get weekly updates rather than, the minutia of the day-to-day.
Someone asked me a couple of days ago if there's one piece of advice I was to give to a small business owner, what would it be? And my response was, invest in your team's culture, because once the team are on board with the journey and where you want to head, they end up being the engine, and they're pushing you rather than you pushing them.
Exactly. Oh, 100%. 100%.
So, you're around that 35, 40 head count. So I imagine, like, you've been through a few ups and downs where there's been times where you've been burning the midnight oil, you've been doing HR. There's times where I reckon around the 20 head count, you were probably making less money for you personally than you were at 10. So
even right now, I would say that's true. Yeah.
So I want to hear a bit about that journey, because it's like having staff of 35, 40 is one thing, but is that actually, what's the impact at those different levels?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think there are different levels. In the beginning, usually it's you and maybe one or two other people, a developer and maybe a designer. You're doing a lot more work. You're running around sometimes like a chicken with their head cut off. Your hair's on fire, but the profit sometimes can be nicer. I've actually noticed the more you grow. So if I had to put it in brackets, there's almost like 3 or 4 stages. It's like 0 to $250,000 to 500, 600, and then above maybe 600 to 2 million, and then above 2 million. So we're now in the small 7-figure range after 8 years. But to your point of what you said, sometimes, you invest so much in systems and operations and people, and then you try to deliver the best quality work. So you're always reinvesting into the company. That never stops. And so we're probably doing less profit, than we were doing 3-4 years ago when we were a third of the size. So there's give and take. There's obviously ways, if you wanted to really show profit and squeeze profit, you could do that in different ways, but you don't want to sacrifice the product or the service itself. So it's kind of a necessary, it's, if you want to grow, it's necessary. But I do tell some people that are at that line, I would say, 25, 50,000 a month, if they don't have high overhead, you may, if you could stay there forever, you could try to stay there forever and not actually grow and systemize and those kinds of things. But what usually ends up happening is if you're not growing, you're dying. So
correct.
It's very hard to stay in one place.
Yeah. And I imagine though, like what's your workload now and your stress level now compared to a couple of years ago?
Oh, way better, for sure, way better. And really, I would say the number one thing that I see a difference in is the routine. Routine is so important. So even if you're managing some projects with just you and 1 or 2 other people, you're doing so much different work every day. Every day looks a little bit different. Every day, there is no uniformity necessarily. Whereas now, there's going to be different challenges that come up, but you build in systems and guardrails where when challenges come up, your PPC people will tell you they need something, but you can handle it in a coordinated way. So, I would say I dedicate a big part of the day to sales and then team. I break it down into 2 pieces. You're talking with new customers and you're talking with your team to service, their whatever issues or roadblocks they might be having servicing your current customers. So I break it down to, like, now it's probably 50% team, 50% sales. Sometimes it's a little bit more team than sales. That does happen. But in the past, in the beginning, you have no idea what you're going to be doing every day. And if there's a fire with the client, you might need to spend 8 hours rectifying one problem. So it's much, I would say, the stress level. There's always stress. So there's always stress. There's always challenges, even when things are going smoothly and you're having a lot of fun, you may lose your largest client, and then you have to scramble, a certain way to get back that revenue or improve in some way. So there's always stress, but I think the stress is much more controlled, much more manageable. Like I said before, even if you have to talk to team late at night, you're, I think, much more used to it. Once you have team, they give you high-level problems to solve. Hey, should we do this or this? It's much easier to say, yes, let's do this, than it is to dig into the problem yourself in those times in the past. So there's always challenges, but for sure it's much more manageable now. And to your point in what you do, I think every business, once they get to that low 7-figure mark, what you're really doing is becoming an executive more than a startup founder or a freelancer or a small business owner. And what that entails is having good systems, repeatable systems that anyone can learn and follow, and then having good teammates who can, operate and even tell you some improvements. They can tell you, hey, this needs to be fixed, that needs to be fixed. And then delegating, so giving them enough trust. Like, we don't time track. If I have to time track people, it's not going to work. We just look at accomplishments more than activity. So as long as you have people who are doing the work, you can systemize, your meetings with them. So once a week, we have meetings with key members of the team. They might have meetings with each other every day, but they'll break some of the core problems that need to be worked out in those weekly meetings. So it becomes more systemized. But like we were saying earlier, there are still times where you have to jump back in, and you still want to know the pulse of what's going on in the company. So there is an urge to want to know everything that's going on, but you try to keep it at a high level as possible. Try not to get too deep unless it's necessary, unless you have to jump in to solve a problem.
Totally. I want to go back to the time tracking part. Like, there's a lot of talk around, is time tracking good? Is time tracking bad? How do you know profitability of each client without time tracking?
So that's a great question. I've had this before. I actually have friends in the agency space who think the opposite of me, and they're like, dude, I need to know every hour what my people are doing and where they're doing it at. So I think on a high level, what needs to be done. The next steps that need to happen to move the ball forward. And it's pretty quick. Like, we've had some team members that didn't work out. I don't need a spreadsheet of their hours sometimes to tell me. You can see if something should take a day and it's taking a week. And on top of that, if it should take a day and it's taking a week and they don't come to you to help and they just let it take a week, that's probably not a good fit. I don't need a spreadsheet to know that. Another thing that I say about this is you want to have superstars on your team. And for me, freedom is important. So I tell people, if they have 5 boulders to push up the mountain today, I don't really care if they can get that done in 2 hours and be on the beach the rest of the day. If they're at the beach pushing up those boulders, I don't really care. I feel like to attract superstars, they need to be treated like superstars. Any place that I've worked at, if I felt micromanaged in any way, I would probably give less effort than I could have otherwise. So I think, it is a risk. There are people that are risk averse, that maybe it's too big of a risk. But I find that after, we give a little bit of a probationary period, within the first month, I can tell if someone's going to be a good fit or not, just by their attributes. If you're a superstar, you're a self-starter. So like for me, and I know for many others who watch this podcast, if I have nothing to do in a day, I'm going to find something to do. Even if my schedule is wide open, I'm not going to be just chilling doing nothing, because that drives me nuts. I'm an ADD person. So I have to be productive every single day. And if there's nothing to do today, I'll do tomorrow's work today, or at least set down the foundations. So you look for the qualities in the team, that those same qualities, even if they know nothing about the specialty, even if you're hiring a content writer who's a decent content writer, but that they have that work ethic and that ambition, you can teach them how to be, you can teach them the ways that to do their job better, as long as they have the characteristics of a superstar. So I do have a friend who's the opposite of me in Scotland, and he always jokes, like, he's very paranoid. He needs to know what people are doing and this kind of thing. And for me, that would and also, if you're time tracking and really looking over every little detail on what your team is doing, that's another thing on your plate now, rather than generating more revenue or some of the bigger picture items that you have. So I think it's also a benefit to us. You were mentioning culture before. I think part of our culture is, hey, as long as the work gets done, do whatever you need to do. If you're an exceptional talent and you don't need 8 hours to do the things that you need to do, you can get them done in 3 hours at the same quality as someone who takes 8 hours. I'm fine with that. I'll still pay you the same as if you worked 8 hours. And so everyone's more salary based rather than hourly, or, because it's not about how active they are. If you hire someone and they take a week solving a problem, that's fine. But if someone can do it in 1 day easier, you'd rather have that.
Totally agree. So I'm still playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
Let's say you're looking at the numbers for the business and your average net profit is 12%. Let's just say, use the number 12%, you're averaging it, and you want to be at 19%. You know your operational expenses are good. How do you, if you're not tracking time, how do you get from 12 to 19% if your OPEX, like if you've looked at everything else, that's clean, how do you get up there, back up to 19, 20?
I think that's a great question. We have a CFO, so every month I'm having meetings on our ratios, debt to earnings, revenue to this, all kinds of ratios, and we go over it. And of course, we look at the change month over month. So if there's a drop in productivity, you can tell, and then maybe you need to have a talk with your team. And sometimes you do find, maybe it's the summer months and people got a little bit comfortable. You might have to light a little bit of a fire under their bums. That's fine. But I think the number one thing that you would do if you're at 12 as the CEO, if you're at 12%, you need to go to 19%. For us, that's always new revenue. You're always a little bit more profitable when you have a couple new customers coming in. The onboarding phase, maybe, for SEO and PPC sometimes can be more costly because there's more that you have to do in month one to ensure 12 months of success. But for me, it always comes down to new revenue. So, that gets to cold email. So I would look at some of the things like if we need to get revenue up, I'd look at increasing advertising on Facebook so that we can get more leads, top of funnel. I'd look at, talking to my email guys, trying to get more leads through cold outreach. I might start cold calling more, hitting our old data. There's always data a business is sitting on that can be very valuable. So those would be the things that I would look at to increase revenue. I wouldn't necessarily, for our business, our team, they're fulfilling the work, they're getting work done. So as long as the client is happy and there is more revenue that the client is making, we're doing pretty good. All of our customers, by the way, are month to month. So they can, if they're not seeing something, they can just stop, no questions asked. And we put that risk on ourselves to make sure that we do the work. So as long as I know my team is doing the work, and let's say revenue is at 12% when it needs to be 19%, usually the optimizations are going to happen in incoming revenue, new revenue. And if we get more new revenue, boom, now we're at 25%.
You fully trust your team.
Yeah.
You fully trust your team to deliver when the work's there.
Exactly. And it's a repeatable system. So all customers, you could say, are going through some of the same things. So you can see between accounts, like I would say account level optimizations may need to happen, where maybe you have 30 accounts, but 2 of them, there's a little bit more bureaucracy and there's more players involved. Then you can jump into those things and try to push those things forward so that, they get their creatives. Instead of approving their creatives for 3 weeks, you talk to who you need to talk to and you get the creatives approved, and now they're making money. So sometimes there are hangups. But a lot of times I would say if there's a revenue problem, it's usually like, hey, we need more new revenue coming in.
Yeah. It's interesting that you look at it from that way. Like, so many business owners struggle to get that extra revenue in. And it sounds like you're really good at, like, if you want to, you can turn the taps on whenever, almost.
Yeah, but it's a mindset thing. So I wasn't always like that. It's being aggressive. So as you know, like during downturns, whenever things get tight or rocky, most people's inclination is to conserve and do less and sort of like hoard their chips and do less. With us, like if we lose a big client, let's say, we throw more money on ads, we spend more money.
So my most popular article on my website is, the title is something along the lines of, more millionaires are made in a recession or a downturn than in a normal economy. Yeah. And what I mean by that is, so many businesses shutter the doors or try and minimize when you're in a downturn or a recession, and they stop lead gen or they just try and survive. But there's still clients there's still prospects out there that need support. Yes, there's less, but because your competitors are shutting the doors almost, there's more opportunity.
More market share. Those are the times when companies take up market share. And I think there's that quote that, a man who stops advertising because they're losing money, it's like stopping time on a clock. So actually, if money is going down, if revenue is going down, if the market's looking, a little bit rocky, that's actually when you should reinvest both your money and your time, double down, and you'll come out of that situation with more market share. Like you said, all the other agencies burned down. Hey, you're still going strong. And sometimes it's good to be a cockroach rather than a lion, which is like, hey, maybe there was a nuclear bomb, but you survived somehow and you come out of it much stronger than those who quit.
Yeah. I want to go into, before starting the recording, we are talking about cold email and what's happening there, like as a lead gen topic. So I reckon this is a perfect segue to go into that, because we both do this.
Yeah, cold email, and it's changed a lot the past year.
Yeah, it's got, cold email has been a thing like 5-10 years, and a lot of people give it a bad name, give it a bad rap. For me, if done correctly, it's extremely powerful.
Yeah, I think for B2B, it's one of those things that has always cut through the noise traditionally over the years. What does happen and why I think it gets a bad rap is because once you have a technique, as soon as the cat gets out of the bag, then everyone is sending the same email. So I remember, I don't know if you remember back a couple of years ago, quick question. The subject, everyone would do quick question. Now I think people have seen that so much that they see the quick question and they're like, they don't even look at it. And then of course, just getting into the inbox is tricky with all the regulations and things that these different ISPs are doing. So it's changed, but as long as you have good people that know, I think upping your sending power is a big deal. So if you want a 1% response rate, if you bank on that, you just have to have a way to make sure you're sending and then make sure it's getting into Gmail inboxes, not promotions or social other tabs. And then, of course, I think what always works, I see a lot of people doing, I would say like cookie cutter, where it's like, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn and blah, 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 and sometimes really long form. And I try to, even in my copy, even if we're going to have, an email campaign all month that's probably going to send 3,000 emails, I try to make it short and sweet. Like, hey, like how a person would talk. Hey, I noticed you're doing this. We could be a good fit. Doesn't make sense. Something like that. The shorter, the better. And then having the other pieces dialed into it. So making sure you're sending them to a calendar book page, a Calendly. Making sure on that Calendly you have some questions for them to answer to make sure they're qualified. That's a big one. Some people reply to the email, but then in the booking and call phase, you might lose them. And then just having good landing pages. I also think videos in email.
Videos make a massive difference.
Yeah.
When I do mine, the difference in a qualified lead, like you'll get a qualified lead after they've watched the video. It's massive, day and night. So how often do you respond to cold emails?
Say it again.
How often do you respond to cold emails?
Often. I think this was a cold email that I'm hearing.
It was the leading question, mate.
Yeah. And it was great. And I think it was short and sweet and it piqued my interest. And I also think, everybody there's always a win-win to be had. So even when you're talking to a business owner or a VP, sure, they love getting a little bit of press or getting out there, some exposure. So when I saw like podcasts, I was like, oh yeah, for sure. Let's do it. And
so for those of you listening that don't know, I connected with Sean through cold email by sending him a podcast request to see if he wants to be a guest on this podcast. So, because I've been testing different concepts about how to get people into my world, into my hemisphere,
and it worked. Yeah.
So
I'm always open to cold email, and I also find, some of our best customers have come from cold email. And I also find that the type of person that responds to a cold email is the type of person I would love to work with. Those are usually people who they're not really risk averse. They're like, hey, show me what you got. They're open to it. They're curious in some ways. Like, oh, you're saying you can do something that'll help me, that'll make me better? Okay, let's see it. So they're adventurous in some way, personality wise. And I think they're not as conservative. Of course, when we send cold emails, we get most of the people saying, no, stop, spam, blah. But like we were saying about, marketing in a recession, those are also the people that when times get tight and things get hard, they go inward rather than going outward. So I like people who respond to cold emails.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, the people that respond, as you said, are probably going to be more like your persona, your avatar. The people that don't respond are the ones that, even if you did market to them in the traditional manner, wouldn't be interested in your services.
Exactly. You know, and if you're doing something right, a lot of people, you know, you'll have haters, so to speak. So even if you're sending out cold emails and you're getting all I call them screamers, you know, people who are like, never email me again. What you're looking for is the diamond in the rough. And so the one person who's open, like, hey, that was a cool video, maybe you can help me. That's going to be potentially a lifetime customer. And you just ignore all the noise.
So I'm going to change tack a tiny bit. Gary Vee, I'm sure you've heard, you know, people either love him or hate him.
Yeah.
He's polarizing. His messages are, what he's saying is actually good, but his messages are quite polarizing. So his whole angle is to polarize and get rid of the people that are never going to be clients, but the people that actually listen to his message and go a bit deeper than that polarizing part are more likely to convert.
I love that. And I actually take the same strategy. I would not recommend anyone to follow me on Twitter, but the Twitter is at Sean B2B SEO. And I just talk about things that I care about. Some people hate me, some people love me. Also, when I present at conferences, I curse a lot. That's not because I'm putting on some persona, but because I curse a lot. You know, I that's just the way I am. And I find that, you know, a lot of times when you go to conferences and you meet people, you can tell who's being authentic and who's not being authentic. And the corporate mumbo jumbo I hate. You know, when someone is maybe giving a business cards, they're in their suit and tie, and they're saying something that is not memorable. It's going to be forgotten. I like people that have a little bit of personality, that, you know, might say something contrarian. They might say something that maybe is not politically correct, or maybe it's a joke, or they curse, and some people don't like cursing. I feel like those people find other people. So the people that I engage with at conferences and at networking events and trade shows are usually people like me. And so, like you said, you attract the people like you throw out all the people who weren't going to like you anyways. So if someone likes the corporate, you know, almost political speech, this is how we do the KPIs, and, like, you know, with no life, no personality, that person that's probably never going to like me, you know? So you have to, I think, knowing who you are and then being unapologetically that is a big winner, I think.
Don't sit on the fence, because as soon as you sit on the fence, you're going to scare everyone away. You've got to take a stance, take an angle, have an opinion, and not take a stance, take an angle, and like grow it, like expand on that.
Be memorable.
Yep.
Yeah, I forget so many people I talk to that are just, you know, like just like the others. But if you meet someone who's just a little bit different, maybe a little bit wonky, you know, maybe instead of asking a question, they say something crazy that you're like, oh, I've never heard that before. You like those people more than the people who are like robots.
There was a guy, I can't remember who it was. He was known as for a few years, he was known as the guy that would wear a Hawaiian shirt to all conferences, all trade shows, all of that, like in the marketing world. And
I know a couple people like that, and yeah, I like those people. I know another guy, and he'll know who he is. Every conference, he wears a basketball jersey. He might have a really nice watch, but he's wearing a basketball jersey and shorts. And I actually think, just being yourself, you know, if that's not you, if you are the suit and tie person, be the suit and tie person. But people can see when you're putting on a facade. Like, I could have been in a suit and tie right now, but why would I do that? You know, it's not actually who I am. I don't like wearing suits, to be honest. It's not comfortable. I like to be, you know, in a hoodie, Air Force Ones, and, you know, just like a normal guy. So you find the people that are like you, and yeah, it helps weed out the, you know, people that would never really be a good fit.
it's a lot easier to work if you're your authentic self, who you are. I know that word, being your authentic self, is over popularized at the moment on social media, but it's true. If you are who you are, you're more likely to attract people that get along with you and will understand you, and you're less likely to have issues with those clients ongoing.
Yeah, and you also, I think, sleep better at night because you're not putting up this facade that might crumble. Like, if you're a person that does curse a lot, and you really try to put on a suit and tie, a buttoned up approach, eventually you're going to curse and you're going to lose everything, or whatever it might be. That, I have tattoos and all kinds of stuff. I don't hide them. This has happened in the past. If I'm speaking to a business owner and I'm in a suit and tie one day and we work together, and then I have tattoos showing and they're like repulsed by that, they like someone clean shaven, and so to speak, that customer would have never been the right customer. I would have lost them somewhere. So sometimes on an introduction call with a client, I'll make sure to curse. I'll make sure to show my tattoos, and I'll give them the inside scoop of everything. I'll show them exactly how things work. I'll have them talk to members of the team. A lot of people, they try to pretty things up, so they won't let you talk to your developers in India or your people in Philippines or in Germany. I'll show a customer the inner workings of everything and see how it works, because the more realistic and authentic and real that I am with them, the more they're actually buying into something real. It's not something that I have to really try hard to keep up.
Yeah, and and the fact that you're not having to hide anything shows to them that it actually works. Because there's always a concern that if people are using someone from India or the Philippines or Latin America even, that you're not going to get the quality. But if you're showing that right up front, you're not hiding anything.
And showing them that, hey, the perception is that you won't get the quality, but if you show, hey, here are the numbers that we do, and here's some of the creatives that we built, the websites that we built, the things that we've accomplished, then they start to see like, oh, that's actually, it's more of an advantage than a disadvantage. And again, I find that the best customers are the ones who are attracted to you. So my best customers, once or twice a year, we'll meet up and we'll party for a week and have beers on the town and that kind of thing, because there's no facade.
Keep the second last week in July free, because I'm running a retreat and you're coming over to that. Over to Southern Hemisphere.
By the way, Australia, I have not visited in a long time. Maybe when I was a kid, I think I was there for a wedding, but we were talking about culture. I brought 10 of our best teammates to Thailand and Vietnam last year, met with so many Aussies, and actually they're my favorite people. I was telling you earlier that to me, they remind me of cowboys, just like a renegade, wild, rugged spirit, which I appreciate here. I'm in Denver, Colorado, but I think most Americans have that same kind of spirit. So I love Australia, and I hopefully will get there this year.
Awesome. Whereabouts in Thailand did you go?
So we went to Chiang Mai SEO, which is in Chiang Mai, Thailand. I also visited, I don't want to say it wrong, Phuket. And
Phuket.
Phuket. Well, see, I can say it a different way that's even worse.
Yes, that's how slang we pronounce it that way. So, I'm pretty sure that's how we pronounce it.
Okay. Yeah. I could say fuck it. That's what I was using.
Some bad luck.
I had to just drop that in there to make sure I had one curse word in the.
Now I've got to put a swear word warning at the start of this podcast.
Jeez, put a disclaimer in the front. Say like this is a very controversial podcast. But no, I loved it. Thailand was great. But again, when I go over there in Southeast Asia, I always find really cool Australians almost everywhere I go. And there's always this camaraderie of like, oh, America, Australia,
We're probably one of the most traveled countries in the world, like nationalities, because we're so far away from everything.
Yeah.
So
for us, that flight is no joke, but I'm getting used to it. I think it's like roughly 22 hours of flight time for me.
Yeah. So for us to get to the West Coast, I think it's about 16 hours. So from where we are, your journey scaling the business, if you had to say, what was the one most surprising challenge that you've had scaling your business, something that you didn't expect?
I actually have a good one for this, and I tell my team this a lot. I would say that everything is the opposite of what you thought, and I'll expand on that a little bit. And then what got you here won't get you there.
That's a big one. Yeah,
that's a big one. And I noticed that. So like in the beginning, when you're starting the business and you're coming out from the mud, you really have to, work almost maniacally to get what your dream is or your vision is off the ground. And you have to put in so many hours. And, at one point I was sleeping in my office. Like I had a couch in my office. I would some nights sleep there. My building manager would always make comments about it too. It wasn't always the happiest conversations, but that's the beginning. And then you sort of think as you elevate, you have to keep that, frenzied activity going. But you're going to burn out if you do that. What you actually have to do is take a step back, delegate, have your team in place, start to find really talented and competent people. And then you actually have to work, I wouldn't say less hard, you're always working pretty hard, but you have to work smarter, not harder. So it's not then, at a certain point, it's not about sleeping in the office every day and getting the work done on the weekends. It's actually about setting some boundaries so that you can go longer, and then having a system in place where you can have other people take off some of the load. You might oversee some things, but they're actually, doing some of that work that used to drive you crazy, and they're experts at it. They're really good at it. So it makes you a little bit more high level. So basically knowing how to work in a smarter way is very tough. In the beginning, you're working, I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan, lifetime. And so, the work ethic, the Mamba mentality, you have that in the beginning, you have that to start the business. And as the business grows, you're not taking your foot off the pedal, but you're applying that work and that frame of mind in different things. So maybe you're setting boundaries like, okay, even though I don't respond to emails on the weekend. Of course, if it's urgent, I'll jump in. But the reason you're doing that is to give yourself more bandwidth for the week. In the beginning, you could start your company and forget about your health. A lot of people do that. And just, everything for the sake of the business, putting yourself last. But over time, especially when you're 5-10 years into it, for the longevity, you actually realize, oh, my health comes first. If I'm not healthy, there is no business. Little things like that as well. In the beginning, you might, really prioritize the business over everything, including family time and decompressing time or travel. But then as you grow and you have systems in place that sort of take off the load or the burden, you realize those things actually recharge you. When you have more, I can pick up my son every day from school, and it's built into the system, and that actually recharges me. Where even if I have to do a little bit of work in the evening, I'm excited to do it because I had some of the quality time that I care about. And then travel. So your first 5 years, you might never take a vacation, you might never go to a conference, but then to work smarter, not harder, you realize sometimes you can really amplify your business if you go to the right conference or you travel to the right place and you meet some of the other people. Like you said, it can be lonely, especially in the beginning. And even in your own family or your own neighborhood block, you don't know many people that are built like you or have the pressures to manage like you have. But when you travel and you go to a conference and you meet other people, you're motivated, you're inspired by others, you learn from others. So you can go to a conference and pick up huge gems that affect your business. Whereas in the beginning of your company, you might think, oh, I can never leave my desk.
Yeah. Building on that, like you're the sum of the people that you hang around with. So if you're stuck at your desk, stuck in your smaller community around you, you're limited in how far you can grow. So being able to get out and talk to others, learn from others, be around similar people that are 1 or 2 steps ahead of you, may be painful at the start because you're stepping away from the business, but it makes a big difference.
And it builds, a system where you can step away from the business, even if you build something great, but you can't step away from it. That's not, then it's limited by you in a way. And then to your point there about knowing people that are smarter than you, I would definitely say that's a huge part of it. I know that, when the business starts to make some money, even 10 or 20,000 a month, you might, and this happened to me, I would say 5 years ago, you might actually think you're the smartest person in the world. And, almost think that, oh, I've got it all figured out. And
I did that once. And I blew up my business, and I was in debt and mental health issues.
Yeah.
I had a 7-figure business in my mid-20s, and I thought, I don't need help. I don't need support from anyone. Yeah. And 6 months later, I was $250,000 in debt.
Exactly. And I think that's a common thing. I think there's a place where that happens. And I think why it also happens is psychological. You have parents, you have some family, and you get to a point where you're bigger than your parents, let's say. So you think like, oh, nobody can tell me anything. And that's the wrong mentality. So I agree. Part of what helped me get out of that was going to conferences and talk to people who are doing 20 million a year, who are the most humble, nicest people that you've ever met, and realizing like, oh, they have a couple of things figured out that I don't have. And then building. Yeah.
been constantly learning from those people. So
Yeah.
you may think you've got it figured out, but yeah, there's so many other people. You've got to expand that network.
And
So
sometimes when you think you got this, has actually happened to us 2 years ago, when everything feels like it's moving in the right direction and you think you've got everything figured out, that's actually when you should be the most paranoid.
Mm.
Because when things are going really good, maybe you take your foot off the pedal, maybe you become complacent, maybe you stop doing outbound sales, and then all it takes is one thing that you weren't expecting to make everything become a little bit more hectic. So I also feel like business owners need a healthy dose of paranoia. When things are going well, you have to be on the lookout for what can go wrong. And when things are going wrong, you just have to have confidence to know that they're going to go right. You're going to make them go right. As long as you don't quit. That's another thing I would say is like, just don't quit. There's so many people in business. I think it's like 96% of businesses don't make it past 5 years and don't get to 1 million in revenue. So there's so many companies that get to 7 figures in year 30. That's fine as long as you didn't quit. Other people would quit at some point if they saw, 1 year of revenue decline. That might scare them to sell the business or whatever. So I think not quitting is a huge part of it.
Yeah, like it's the people that keep going and keep iterating and keep refining are the ones that are successful. It's not necessarily the most talented. It's the ones that are going to keep refining and improving.
And that's the gift in all this as well. Sometimes we get too caught up in the numbers. Like we were saying, how do we go from 12% revenue to 19% revenue? We can get into this like short-term thinking of, oh, I have to get more revenue next month and next year and next year. But then you start to realize that it's actually not about the money. At a certain point, you're good. And it's different for everybody, but at a certain point you're good. And really what you're getting out of it is the journey itself. So just the fact that you get to work with your team and you get to solve these complicated problems for businesses, you get to make an impact in other businesses' lives. We have some clients where, they tell us funny things like, man, we're so busy. We're having a hard time shipping it. It's driving us crazy. We have to hire more people. And those are good problems. So seeing that it's not really the P&L balance sheet at the end of the day that you're working for, it's something bigger. It's a mission that's freedom, purpose, your dream, maybe. So I think reminding yourself of that it's not even all about the P&L, the
journey,
right? It's more about the journey that you're on.
Got a quote: happiness. There's no way to happiness. Happiness is the way to life. So happiness is the way. You've got to continue that journey being happy now. There's no way to find happiness. You've got to choose to be happy now.
It's the present moment. And actually, to your point, our company is alchemyleads.com. Alchemy. I have some people in the past, and I can actually tell when customers are going to be a good client. So I've had a customer that was like, hey, Alchemy doesn't work, right? And obviously that's not a good fit for us, a person who thinks like that. But it's based on the book, The Alchemist. And does all these things, and eventually he realizes like, oh, just the journey that I'm on is the thing that's the coolest part about this. That's one thing. Another way to look at it is just turning a negative into a positive or nothing into a something. And there are a ton of actual real world examples of alchemy, all of metallurgy. There's a bunch of them. But so that's kind of our company name and the mantra. Like the journey isn't finished, and the journey is what makes it great. Totally.
What's one thing that you're at a personal level that you're wanting to change or do differently this year?
Oh, there's so many. It's New Year's.
One thing that you need to do.
Yeah, it's New Year's week, right? It's the 7th. So I have some resolution. Yeah, revelation says, whoa. But I would say the number one thing, as you said, keep learning is huge. But so what I need to increase this year, I did it really well during COVID. I was reading books like crazy. And then, you get into the past few years, you get into the day-to-day and the minutia, and, something falls off. So I would actually say reading more books. And I have Audible, and I do have audiobooks, and I like that on planes and things. But I mean actually reading more books. I think with social media and our attention spans are just shot. And I notice even if I read 25 pages of a book in a night, you feel a little bit refreshed. You feel like you have mental clarity. You feel better. And then, of course, you learn all these gems. So I like business books. I like autobiographies of really important people. And A lot of times you see that they had the same struggles that you might have had. You also see that they weren't always the most talented. They were just resourceful and gritty and didn't quit and found maybe an alternative way that other people weren't looking at. So for me, reading books is the most important thing I have to do this year. More books.
Yeah, continual learning and being present.
Yeah, yeah. And you can always be a better, I always find that I can always be a better team leader or manager of my people. And then what that usually comes down to is just making the time for them. So, if there's a problem and they need 4 hours of your communication to work through it with them, sit down with them. They really are like your right hand. So whatever time investment you give them comes back to you in their expertise and the way that they figure things out on the fly. Sometimes they get to a point where they can figure everything out without even letting you know. And that's a great thing.
That's it. Yeah. The more you invest in your team, the more that they can stand on their own 2 feet.
100%. It always pays off.
Yeah. Sean, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, man. It was great talking to you.
And I'm not going to ask for your contact details because you've already shared them. So we know how to contact you at Alchemy Leads.
AlchemyLeads.com. Yeah, just check us out. And then you can find us on LinkedIn and all those social platforms.
Awesome, mate. Talk to you soon.
All right. Talk to you soon.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning into The Growth Equation. If you've enjoyed the show, hit that subscribe button and leave a review. It helps us big time. Catch you next time. And if you want more, head over to evolvetogrow.com.au for show notes and exclusive content.